One other main player in the story, and this actually goes back to the, again, this is so corrupt, the actual creation of the position that Goldwyn takes goes back to an aide to Senator Lugar named Neil Brown, and how this actual position that's making all these policies and doing all this behind the scenes push for neoliberalism, push for privatization. They actually created this position, and these people were a lot of these people were there pretty much throughout the whole entire process. Talk about Neil Brown and Brown's connection to both the Senate, the policy, and everyone else involved here.
Yeah, so Neil Brown is kind of like the one where it seems sort of weird, like, who is this guy? He didn't work for the State Department or anything. Why is he relevant? But he is extremely relevant. He was the top energy aide to Senator Richard Lugar, who was the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And as part of the Foreign Relations Committee, one of his biggest pushes was stuff on energy and quote-unquote energy independence and quote-unquote energy security. And so Neil Brown had been working on that portfolio for Lugar for, I think, something like 6 years or more. And then he left. He went to the revolving door and ended up getting a job, lo and behold, with David Goldwyn at Goldwyn Global Strategies. He worked there for a year and then got a job at Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts, or KKR. KKR is where the former head of the CIA, David Petraeus, now works. They both work at the KKR Global Institute, and KKR recently announced that they would be investing in midstream infrastructure, or pipeline infrastructure, and that sort of stuff that carries the oil and gas to market in Mexico. They announced that they would be teaming up with a company called Montera Energy. They announced that this summer, and so KKR has it's involved in a lot of stuff with oil and gas besides that, including in the United States. But they're very excited about what's happening in Mexico because it's a huge investing opportunity for their firm. And Neil Brown, of course, the position, as you mentioned, that was a position that was an idea of Richard Lugar. And one interesting little note that I pointed out in the story is that when he announced this provision that ended up becoming a provision in a broader Senate bill, he announced it at the Brookings Institution, which at the time the vice president of the Brookings Institution was Carlos Pascual, who ended up assuming that position. So Carlos Pascual was moderating the event, Lugar was speaking, and then years later, Pascual goes on to assume that position, and now everyone associated with it, helping create that position, now works for the industry and is making a whole lot of money off of the stuff that the person in this position helps make possible around the world.
I think it's something that a lot of people don't think about that much, and really, and we kind of touched on it here, but it's like how much power the State Department actually has, and a lot of this, is done, and like without people really following it very closely, and just the revolving door aspect of, the State Department getting industry in the door, they make the policies they want, going back to that. It really is something that it kind of goes to show just, again, I guess how broken our entire government actually is, because this is something that happens all the time, and people, and again, like the media in the U.S. just sort of shrugs their shoulders, or if they even pay attention to it at all.
Yeah, and I think it goes to show how important the WikiLeaks cables are. Chelsea Manning, the leaks, the things that are disclosed in there. This story was made possible entirely. I mean, a little bit of stuff in the Hillary Clinton emails from the Jason Leopold Freedom of Information Act request, but in large part, really confirming that stuff was the WikiLeaks cables. And of course, some of the stuff is already dated. This is stuff from half a decade ago, and it's hard to know what this. I mean, that's why going back to why these are so important. It's hard to know everything the State Department does. The State Department takes years to respond to Freedom of Information Act requests, and also, what do you get? Often you get stuff that's largely redacted. And so, what was nice about the cables is that nothing was redacted. It was these diplomats around the world speaking to one another, pretty frankly, about what they're doing around the world. And so it was amazing. It's amazing insight, and it's still relevant today. Of course, it would be really nice journalistically to know what they're talking about in 2014 and 2015 as opposed to 2009, 2010. But it is what it is, and it's still helped put a lot of the pieces of the puzzle together.